Hey y'all, this is Melissa Rogozinski with the Marketing Phoenix podcast. And so excited to have you here today with my very good friend, Chris Cangero with DocStyle, founder and CEO. He has an amazing bootstrapped journey to share with you. And Chris and I have hours long conversations about sales and hunting and prospecting and discovery and how we know a lot of other like legal tech startups. We're having conversations with them that they're expecting marketing to do all the work. You have a big generation that has been, raised in the digital stage or with the pandemic, and they just wait for marketing to deliver all these MQLs to them. And they're sitting and they don't know how to hunt. They don't know how to prospect. There isn't a process. And when they, do get into meetings, they haven't done research. They don't understand discovery and how to prepare smarter for that and close better and close faster. So we have a lot to unpack, and I'm super excited to have him here. I'm glad you're here with us. Chris, say hello to our audience and please tell them a little bit about your background and we'll get started.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate being here. I have a very maybe interesting and unique journey. I started out, my father had run a business, and when I was young, in my early teens, he drafted me, in a sense, into his operation. And I worked in a warehouse on Long Island in New York, where I grew up. And I started building computers back when you bought a PC, and it was an IBM clone or some type of white box that was custom built for you. And he sold business to business, having come from Wang Laboratories. He had a lot of legal customers, which is how I got into legal tech. You take the tech of working in the warehouse and building computers on an assembly line, handling inventory management, starting at 12, going all the way up to when I was working through school, summers and weekends, holidays, and then I joined his business formally after I finished with school in my early 20s, and that was, I would say, the most important part of my mentorship in terms of my entrepreneurial journey. He was a sales-focused founder. So he taught me the sales process, the understanding of money and how it works in a business, the operational needs that tie into the sales operation itself. And there were some gaps, though, that my father was not an expert in. Marketing was not as important of a business unit as it is today. And so that's something that I've worked on, where I've taken the sales and finance approach, married it up with my own interest in operations and scaling a business from startup to growth phase, and really trying to streamline it and get the most out of the operation that I possibly can, so that we can build our client base and grow the company organically as much as possible. And then marketing was something that I felt was incredibly important and becoming more and more important. So understanding the importance of branding, understanding the importance of a cohesive message, a planned and thoughtful messaging set of things that you would want to put together in the pieces that make up the collective of how to reach customers and build awareness for who you are and what you have to offer and how you can help them, more importantly. So my journey has taken me almost entirely in an entrepreneurial sense. I did start working with my father in his business, and that was really the only full-time job that I had. In 2007, I started my own service consulting business. In 2010, I started the software company with my partner, who I still work with today, who's exceptional and wonderful. And my entrepreneurial journey has taken me a long way and gone through many trials and tribulations to get to where I am.
So let's start with this question. When you and I were chatting in one of our almost monthly 2-hour conversations about legal tech sales, what was it about this topic that appealed to you?
So I absolutely love the sales process. I think that as I got older, I started to embrace the connective tissue of other areas that would feed into sales. The importance of having really good conversations with your prospects, to understanding what's important to them. The discovery phase of the sales process it's the foundation that sets up the engagement and the management through the pipeline. You want to meet your client's expectations or your prospective client's expectations. So how do you work with them in a cooperative way so that you go through that journey together? And it really doesn't start with sales. It starts with their interest in the business, in the products that you offer, in you as an individual, and the importance of making sure that they understand who you are before you even have that discovery call, and knowing what to ask them and what to talk about and what to uncover and understand about their challenges, to put yourself in their shoes. These are all important elements. And so that once you have that journey kind of mapped out, you then can fall back on, well, how do I now manage the operational pieces of the business to support the customer's journey through the sales process? Because ultimately it's a team effort. It's not just one person. And I have, as I've gotten older, I get pitched all the time from people who call me up. They find me on LinkedIn, they cold call and they dial and they get me, and they don't have a plan. They don't have a way of conveying the importance of their message. They just have a product and they're talking about it like it's an object and it will benefit me, but they don't know how. And there are the challenges that I think we try to unpack. What is our story? What is your story? How do our products fit into your journey and your story? What can we do to help you? Is there genuine help here? Is it the right fit? These are questions that get uncovered as you walk through the process with your prospect. And it starts, I believe, before you even have that first conversation.
So you mentioned that this is a team effort, that selling is a team effort. So let's talk about that. So in most of the marketing and sales funnels we see, lead generation starts at the top of the funnel with brand awareness, thought leadership, so forth and so on. And as I've talked with you before, and I mentioned at the beginning of our interview here, I'm having a lot of legal tech vendors who are somewhere between the 5 and 10 year mark, that they're having conversion problems between the marketing qualified leads and the sales qualified leads. And we're starting to carve out some fractional services. They often want us to start at that lead management and sales enablement level, which is a lot further down, but my question is, I really need to understand how you're qualifying at the top, because if you've only got a 2% conversion rate, you should be somewhere between at least a 10 and 20 conversion rate. So something at the top isn't working. But then I'll also start discovering that the sales team, and a lot of them are junior sales, maybe they don't have any experience in law. I come to find out they've done no prospecting on their own. They're completely relying on marketing to generate all of their leads. So talk to us about the foundation of lead generation. There's these industry standard models, but then there's Chris, who has built not one, but 2 businesses and bootstrapped it. And you're running a 7-figure business now. Chris, you did it. So talk to us about the disparate, how leads are generated. What's the foundation of lead generation? And let's address this disparity between marketing and sales qualified leads.
It's a great question. To unpack this, let's start with the truth about legal and selling into the legal industry. Mm-hmm. It is incredibly difficult. Mm-hmm. There is a very long sales cycle. There are expectations and demands of the technology. There isn't always an understanding of how the technology is put together and how it works. There's this expectation that, well, this is how I want it to be. And that's not always the case. So there is a dance that happens where you are going round and round with your customer and trying to make sure that they understand what it is that you offer, what it is that you as a business provide, what your mission is, and how it fits into their business model, their process inside the law firm. That takes time. So patience is my number one recommendation. A lot of the things that I do are just practical. And when you apply them to the experience that you have trying to sell into legal, you have to know your customer. You have to know your industry and know your customer. And that means that you have to have patience for the process. And the process sometimes can be meeting or trying to address some unrealistic expectations. So legal itself is a difficult industry. Mm-hmm. And it takes time. If you think you're going to jump into legal and just get rich quick, that's not how legal works. Law firms will choose a vendor, choose a particular type of product. They'll put an importance on that product, and it's something that they usually carry for a while. So if you have an established market where there's a saturated product set, that's something that you're going to have to share your value and recognize and identify some real pain points that they're experiencing currently with a product that they're using or a product that they've recently left, or just their experience with the vendor, the culture of the company they're working with. All these things come together, and you have to be able to address them and navigate them. And that starts with your messaging and your branding at the company level. So at that top of that funnel, you want to be able to showcase who you are, what your culture is, the culture of your organization, why you care about legal tech and what you're delivering to the legal community, how important the customer is to you, and why it's so important that you help them solve their problems. And what is your mission? What is your ultimate goal? What are you trying to accomplish in your career as a legal technology professional? And those things define who you are. And that authenticity, and we talk about authenticity all the time in all of the social circles, but that authenticity comes through when you know yourself, when you know what your mission is, what your business model is, what your journey is going to try to produce as an end result for your customer, and to be there throughout and support and be present throughout the process, all the way from the top of the funnel down to the bottom. And I would even argue and advocate for a continued engagement beyond the sale. So many times you say, thanks a lot for your money, thanks for your business, thanks for your trust, and you then leave them to their own devices. How do you carry them across the finish line? How do you work with them to onboard your product, to show them how it works, to offer training, to get them to a successful adoption of the solution, and then reinforce that continuously with follow-up and engagement to realize that you're building a relationship, just like you're building a relationship with a person or a spouse or a friend. You're building a relationship that needs to last a decade or more. And to do that, you have to care. You have to be engaged. You have to ask questions. You have to understand their pain points and their needs, their struggles and their challenges, and you have to help them with the tools and the skills and the resources that you have to help them with. And we help in business. We help each other for money, but ultimately there has to be more than just, I want your money. I want to help you through this journey, and I want to see you succeed, and we're going to succeed together. And that's the holistic nature of the very first moment they learn of you from either your website, your thought leadership, your email campaign, whatever it may be, all the way down to the day that they leave and say, thank you for all of your help and care over the years. We have to go in a different direction, but we appreciate you. That's what you want. You want that 15-year journey. If you're not looking at a sales process through that lens of longevity, then you're setting yourself up for failure in the beginning.
So you bookended that with the market insight. Like, you have to understand legal and legal tech, and it's just a completely different beast. But you wrapped it up, and I'm really glad you touched on this with client success, because you don't just leave the deal after it's done. Client success is everything. That's what keeps the revenue coming. That's what keeps the relationship growing and strong. So talk to us a little bit about your prospecting process, and not asking for any like IP or anything, but like just in general, selling legal tech. Foundationally, what is your prospecting process?
So, first and foremost, having messaging available that people can go and consume on their own is really important. So you want to try to get your business model out there in different mediums and different forms. For the most part, we try to traffic and funnel our customers into our website so that they can come in and take advantage of the call to actions that we have. And what we want to do is we want to be able to have them come to us through inbound interest. Now, we do cold call and prospect, but the goal of prospecting in a cold fashion through outreach is not to go out there and dial for dollars and make 100 calls a day. What we want to do is we want to narrow that down to where we're making a dozen calls a day, but they're really they're qualified and quality engagements that are outbound oriented. So I want to be able to capture some information. I want to know what your interests are before we make that first phone call. So where did you go on the website? What did you look at? The analytics behind your journey to what you're focusing on. We have 3 different products. So what drew you in the first place to find our site? What then did you engage with? What pages, what content, what information did you consume? And we try to narrow that down into the information that helps us tell, that gives us an idea of what your interests and needs are. And so from that, we then draft discovery questions, and we have a canned set of discovery questions that we ask, and everybody's trained on how to ask them. But really it's about taking that information and then putting together a custom set of questions and setting up a conversation to talk with the prospect about what their challenges are, their needs are, what their interests are, and what drew them to us. And really it starts as a discussion. So yes, we have bullets and topics, but much like this conversation, it's, tell me about your business. Tell me what led you to look at our page about document cleanup. What are you struggling with when you try to clean documents, and why is it so important that you are interested in a tool to help you? So talk about your business process. And we go through these questions, as some of them some of them are organic that come out in the discussion, and we listen. We pull out our listening ears. We ask questions to get the prospect engaging and talking about themselves. We don't try to sell anyone in the discovery call. So you're not pitching your product. You're not talking about the price. You're not talking about how important the feature set is and how it can help them. None of that happens in the discovery call. We don't do any of that. And so we gather all that information, and we then set up a presentation of the tool, the product that we offer, and we tailor that presentation to what their needs and challenges and interests and what led them to us are. And that's really important, because when we show someone a workflow in a presentation about how our product can help them, they're able to connect with why we care about them and why we took the effort and the time and the energy to hear them, listen to them, understand their pain points, and show them how we can help them rather than show them a whole bunch of features. And we start the journey of telling a story of how we as a company, not just the products, can help you. And so that builds from the initial presentation and the conversation into a technical discussion maybe, and then into a second follow-up demo with a deeper dive where we really dig into the product and how it works and how it can help and the workflow of the business. We talk about how we can complement a customer's workflow, and how we can use the software to set it up a certain way to embrace a workflow that they already have. And so there's not so much change. And by the time we get to the conversation about money, the hope is that the interest of the customer asking us, why should we choose you, is now flipped upside down, where now the prospect genuinely believes, and has good foundation to believe this, that our product and our solution and our company and our personnel and our people now are the best fit for their business, and they become our champions as they push it across the finish line. So there's a conversion process that happens in the sales cycle that usually happens about 2/3 of the way or 3/4 of the way through, which is the critical piece, which is getting a customer to buy in before they actually pull the trigger on sell. I'm purchasing the software or whatever it is, that your service, your software, your physical product.
All right, so let's talk about that. So you talked about you get a lot of inbound traffic to your website. So what are the tools that you use to get those leads to your website? And what are the tools that you're using to see what you need to see in order to, so those that are coming into your website, we'll call those MQLs, marketing qualified leads, because they're finding the information they need for themselves on their own. And then they're making another move. And then when that move happens, you have data that you're analyzing. What are the tools you're using to analyze that data in order to pick up the phone and call them and convert them into a sales qualified lead and start that discovery process? So what are you doing to get them to your website? What tools are you using to analyze what they're doing so that you can make that phone call and convert them from MQL to SQL and start them through that discovery process?
So the outbound effort is multifaceted, right? So there's email marketing, there's thought leadership that we do, there's information that we put up on our blog, there's engagement like this, which is through a podcast or an interview. We do a lot of our effort through trade shows, and choosing the right trade shows are really important. So we use and I try to centralize tools as much as I can. So one of the tools that we use is HubSpot for our CRM. I have used a whole bunch of CRMs in my time. There are no perfect CRMs. They all lack in some way or benefit in some way. And you have to pick the best one that kind of fits your business. There are a number of enterprise grade CRM tools out there. I think we all know their names. There's Salesforce, there's Dynamics, there's HubSpot. There's the I guess the old flat file ones that we used to use back in the past when the business was really small, like Act and Goldmine and things of that nature. But
oh my God, do you remember Goldmine?
Yeah, I used them all.
You're showing your age, Chris. Because I know what you're talking about. That was the first one I was trained on. We're a Zoho house. We use Zoho for a lot of startups because it's got everything they need, and it's a very, very comfortable price for startups. So
Zoho is a really nice product. I do think that it covers a lot of bases. The challenge is when you want to get really creative with a multi-product engagement. So one of the things that we have now that we didn't when we started is we have multiple products that solve multiple problems, and they overlap. And we have to get creative competitively to package them in different ways. And so you want to have a CRM that embraces the way in which you design your approach to the market in terms of how you're packaging your products, how you're putting them up and making them available, how you're pricing them, how you structure them. All of that comes into play. So, the CRM really is the most important focal point, it's the starting point. We used MailChimp when we started for email marketing because it was inexpensive and really easy to work with. I found it a little bit difficult to set up some of the templates, but once you got them set up, it was pretty easy to work with. And then, later on when we got HubSpot, we switched over to HubSpot and we started using HubSpot for email marketing. So there's analytics and tracking that are part of that. There's analytics and tracking that are tied to the website. So we use Webflow for our website hosting. The flexibility of Webflow is I think is phenomenal. And the things that we can do with Webflow in terms of running it, managing, setting it up, and the connectivity that we have between the website, the CRM, and Stripe for billing, which is really important, is really helpful. And so, you use the analytics packages that that tie into that, and try to gather as much information as we can. There's a sales database that we also utilize to be able to help us gather some information about customers and prospects. We try to pull industry metrics and information on customers, potential customers. That what are the software products that you use currently? There are organizations out there that collect and make that information available, so that you can do some research on a product that's more than just going out to the website and looking them up and getting their bio and things of that nature. The information that we try to draw in and pull in and utilize is really important to help us set up that discovery engagement to learn about them. And it doesn't really matter if the lead is generated through outbound or inbound. Inbound leads are a little bit easier because they came to you with interest. Outbound prospecting, you have to simultaneously create that interest while you're getting them into the funnel. So it's a little bit more challenging. But I would advise that everybody at least make a handful of calls a day. Number one, it'll keep your skills sharp. Number two, it'll help you refine your pitch. Number three, it'll really help you with the conversational aspect of being nimble and talking on your feet and having different questions or responses get thrown at you, and dealing with rejection. I mean, it's part of sales. It's the largest part of sales is objection handling and the constant struggle with that. So we do try to traffic everybody into our CRM. It is the most important tool that we use on the sales side and then the marketing side. And so once they're in the CRM, setting up the CRM so that you can manage them through the process. You have a sales funnel. You go through a phased pipeline approach. You walk them through. You set weighted totals against revenue, projected revenue. You're constantly updating, constantly refreshing that information. Every time you have a touch point with a customer, what did I learn? How did it change the dynamic of the opportunity? What is in the best interest of the customer? It may be bringing your seat count from 200 to 100. It may be adding a different product to complement something that they didn't even realize was a pain point that you've uncovered in the discussion. So having a very fluid and dynamic, deal and management of that deal and the tracking and the organization of everything that ties into making that deal a successful conversion and a close, that's all managed through the CRM. So, when you get the CRM out of the box, first thing first, ask yourself the hard questions of, what does my sales process look like? What's the journey I want to put my customer through? And how do I want to set up and tailor the CRM to manage a customer through that process? And I would advise on young startups to try the different CRM packages before they buy them. Use the sample data if it comes with it. Customize during that trial window and try to really say, okay, what information do I want to collect and how is this going to flow? Because how easy is it to work with this product? So those are the things that I would that we use and that I would talk about just in a general level to manage somebody through that process. But the customization of the CRM and the information that you're collecting that stems from your discovery, as you're learning, think through, how is this new piece of information? Where do I need to place it in the CRM? How am I going to utilize it in my workflows and my sequencing? How am I going to now use this data in multiple ways? These are all things that help you evolve the CRM over time and improve your process. And you're always improving your process.
So what's the difference between, let's just talk about the results of just winging it and you're going after a sales deal, or taking the time and the process to prepare with marketing, data, intent, analytics? What's the difference between winging it and preparing?
Winging it is something we do when we're young or we're new to the entrepreneurial journey.
Mm-hmm.
It is easy because it's faster.
Or
So
junior salespeople too.
yes. Oh, absolutely.
And sometimes the way they are or are not trained.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, if you're hiring somebody who's new to sales, who's out of school and who wants to build a career in sales, be their mentor. Without question, provide them the time, give them the training and the resources. I had that luxury. I had that for 8 years, working with my father. And it was a wonderful experience. I would say that it was the most important part. It was the foundation for my success that I have today. So, number one, be a mentor. If you're experienced and you're in a managerial role, if you're an owner and you have experience selling, it is really important to appreciate that the sales process and learning how to engage with prospects and customers is incredibly important and invaluable. And if you're winging it, you're potentially changing your approach every time. So you can't build consistency. And consistency is important because it's going to keep you on the right path. I see people lose track of the messaging. I see business owners and salespeople start to talk about their company, their business, their brand in an inconsistent manner with the marketing and the messaging and and all the other people and individuals that are going to touch that customer at some point or another during the process. And the consistency of putting together a plan, a workflow, a strategy, and sticking to it is incredibly important. So you want to be able to, in your mind, and obviously I would say put this plan together on paper and follow it, put together a workflow, that a journey that you intend to take the customer down on, and have some flexibility in that so that you can be responsive to their needs, but never so much that you come off the rails. You don't want to go off the track or send the train in a different direction. You want to go towards your goals. And so I look at goal, like a goal is like a Christmas tree so much. The star at the top of the Christmas tree is your ultimate goal. What do I want to accomplish with this business and where am I going? And as you go down the layers and the tree gets bigger and bigger and you have more pieces, you're actually working your way towards that goal to get to the top of the tree. But you're starting out with all these branches on the bottom. And it's incredibly important, for customers to have consistency in that journey, to understand how important you walking them through that process is. And then ultimately, when you can replicate that over and over again, you can refine that process. You can get better at it so that now you're picking out like, okay, I could have done better here. I could have made had this conversation over here. I could have done this over here. And now you're able to say, okay, I'm going to improve the process. I'm going to see what works, see what doesn't. It's almost like A/B testing your sales workflow, your pipeline and your journey that you walk them through. And so if you're winging it all the time, you can't do that. You can't learn from what worked and what didn't work and then make adjustments that refine the process, which is incredibly important in my opinion.
So you talked about consistency and messaging and how important it was to not wing it, and that the team, every member of the team, you've got marketing, you've got sales, you've got client success, you've got operations. You talk about having consistency and messaging across the team, which is a big part of marketing's job. So what are some of the ways that you use marketing collateral or assets throughout the sales discovery process? I've got some ideas on that, but I want to hear from you first.
So we put together our marketing information and collateral that we share with our customers. Some of it's digital, some of it's print, some of it, nothing's really print anymore, but sent out as a print piece.
I don't know. You showed up with something printed this morning. You showed up with a marketing collateral.
I did. I absolutely love the
sales-driven marketing model.
Yep. And I think it's brilliant. I like that it covers the entirety of the process. I do believe that sales and marketing are intertwined. Mm-hmm. So if you're approaching it with one or the other, you're only approaching it with half of the solution, or you're only meeting half of your client's needs, because they need to understand who you are in order to buy from you. You need to build trust. And it's a cooperative, it's a synchronous relationship between sales and marketing. And marketing can reinforce sales while you're in the sales process when they're not really sure, and you can point them towards other collateral that may, or other information that's generated and created by marketing. The support of the marketing teams, to help reinforce what you're trying to convey to the prospect. I mean, all of that kind of comes together. So, I would say that buyers today are informed buyers. When I started working in sales, they were not nearly as informed. There wasn't as much information out there. They want to consume the information. They want to know that they're making the right decision before they make the decision. No one wants to have a mistake, because a mistake, particularly in B2B software, it can be costly. Not only is it costly in terms of the lost, investment that you've made, you've lost time, you put people and personnel, and you've trained. You have the embarrassment maybe of the failed the failed project, and all of it could have been avoided by engaging your prospect and your customer in a really dynamic way. And that means respecting sales and marketing as a dual role. Yes, they overlap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some of the ways that I use it all the time. We have a ton of content now with blog articles, podcasts, videos, lots of other clips that I've made as a result of that. The asset, I've created several assets like that. And the biggest ways I use them in my sales discovery process is, like you, it's generally the third or fourth touch in conversation before I'm talking about RPC's offerings. Those first two or three are all about the prospect. And it's easy enough to do that so that when you get to that third or fourth meeting, they're asking you to tell them more about you. And then you're starting to turn that into a buying process instead of a sales process. The way that I use marketing throughout that process is every time I have a conversation and I do a follow-up email, I'll pull 1 to 3 pieces, no more than that, of marketing collateral that specifically relates to something we talked about. And I'm looking more for what they've talked about, what they're interested in, a pain point they mentioned, and I'll use that in every single follow-up. And I've also used it in order to clarify something that I discussed or how I responded, or maybe we ran out of time, or I realized, I could have given a little bit more information. There's actually more information in this case study. So I'll send that to them, and let them lead it, that way. And so I've had great success in my discovery meetings when I do that. And we know this is true, especially in 2025. Lots of people are interested. Sales activity has been great. We can get them to the finish line, but it's been really difficult to get people across the finish line right in 2025. And I do think it has a lot to do with the trade war that's happening right now. But I've seen several conversations pick up 3 and 4 months later because of those assets. Or I was able to use something and say, hey, just checking on you. You said something new was happening this fall. Here's an asset. I don't pitch or ask for anything. I just give them something. I give them a piece of marketing collateral. And that starts the conversation too, because I'm demonstrating my patience. You mentioned that in the beginning. I'm demonstrating thought leadership. I'm giving them exactly what they need. I'm listening to their pain points, and I'm putting the ball in their court. And it's all about, and I wasn't like this when I first started in sales either. And it took time to learn this, to turn the selling process into a buying process so that they come back to the table and say, hey, I want to know more. And the conversations I'm having, they actually want to spend more money because they realize they need more than what we had originally talked about. And they need something more sophisticated, more customized. And, that's just one example of how I use marketing throughout my sales discovery process.
So I want to talk about something that you touched on earlier, if that's okay. You mentioned, that in the beginning, your what are some of the things that what's the importance of the sales process and defining it, winging it versus having a plan. So in the very beginning, you have the luxury of time, and time is everything. And time relates to how prepared you're going to be for when customers find out who you are and have interest and they come to you and all that, right? So it's really important that you take the time as you're building out your sales process, as you're saying, okay, how do I want to walk this customer through a journey, or a prospective customer through a journey in a hypothetical? And at the very least, put together a simple framework so that you can start building those train tracks. Now, while you're doing that, start writing content. Write out your thoughts and ideas. Pull it from your business plan. Pull it from your marketing collateral on what your product does. Start telling a story about what your product and your products in the company offer, and get that content together, because you're absolutely right. And you're going to need to reinforce the customer's belief or the prospect's belief that you can solve their problems and help them. And that is going to be a strategic delivery of marketing collateral and information. And if it's published and it's prepared and it's polished and it was well written and it fits the need and the point and it comes from different perspectives and different angles, you can then go through that library of content and say, and this is where the cooperation comes in, right? When you get out of the garage, in a sense, and been referred to as, guy in a garage many times in my career. But when you get out of the garage, in a sense, and you start working collaboratively as a sales team, right? That's where you can start to bring and draw in other resources and personnel from your own team and the materials that you have. So you would engage, and I believe that the salesperson, whoever is the person who is driving the opportunity, they are the primary. They are the strategists. They're the ones that make the decisions. Do we go left? Do we go right? Do we guide the prospect this way? Do we guide the prospect that way? It is so important that you have one chef in the kitchen. And that person, whoever that may be, should have the responsibility and the authority to go out there and draw resources in and utilize them in a way that best serves the customer. And the word I used was serves the customer, serves their needs. So you're going to reach out to the marketing associate to find the right piece of content that's going to fit your strategy of where that customer is and where they need to go to the next step. And that piece of collateral is going to come from marketing. And maybe it comes from an individual who contributes. Maybe it comes from a piece of paper that's sent over. Maybe it comes from a link that's sent to them that brings them to a podcast interview or a thought leadership article or what have you, right? That's one part. Then as you're going through, you have someone to support the presentation. Maybe you're doing the presentation. Maybe you have somebody to actually walk them through a demo of the product while you sit back as the strategist to kind of make sure that you're guiding that discussion and that presentation so that you can get to your next, expectation, like your close expectation. Where do I want to move this customer to next? So at the end of this presentation that we're doing, this initial demo, what is it that I want to have happen next? What is the customer? What are they going to expect from the process at this point? Are we going to a technical discussion? Are we going to a second demo with a deeper dive in the product? Are we going into a pricing negotiation, right? All of those things are on the table, and your job as the salesperson, as the professional who's the strategist and the primary, you're to guide them along the way. And maybe during that initial demo, you need to bring in a product expert. Having the product experts in your company that with a technical knowledge and understanding, having them versed in how to engage a sales prospect, incredibly important. So you want to prepare your resources. You want to prepare your assets. Every salesperson, whether you're a junior, a senior, whether you work for a company or you're on your own, you're all entrepreneurs in my mind, because you're managing a business model, a business unit that's going out there and meeting and serving the customer's needs and getting them over the finish line. So you're going to need to coordinate all these resources and assets. You're going to need to know when and where to utilize them. It includes marketing, it includes development, it includes, support, it includes pre-sale support, more so probably than post-sale support, but you're drawing from all of that so that you can address every concern, handle every objection, fit every need, and then the customer then they believe that you're the best resource and solution for their business challenge. And that's how you end up getting to a conversion. If you don't have your customer, if they're not convinced that you're the right product and you're at 85, 90% of close in your pipeline with your percentage of close guesstimate, if you're at 80 or 90, 85 or 90% of close and they didn't close, then they were not at 90%. They were not prepared. You did not get them to connect with why you're the right fit as well as you could have. And that happens. It happens a lot. You have to analyze that and understand, how can I refine the process now? Mm-hmm. So that's where we come back to winging it. We're not winging it, right? So it all kind of comes together in I think it's incredibly important that you respect the fact that it's a journey, and you use the time that you have when you're starting the business before you get really busy to design as much of this as you can, because no matter how much you think you have, you're always going to need more.
So let's talk about the sales-driven marketing model that you flashed to everybody. I'm going to pull it up. Let's see. Let me get the screen. That's the one I want. Okay. So we chatted a little bit yesterday before the podcast interview this morning to confirm it and whatever, and kind of prepare some questions. And I sent this. We just prepared this about a month ago, so I sent it to you along with the brief. So 2 questions: what was your first thought when you saw it? And the second question is, how does this model help support everything we've just been talking about to help legal tech tell its story and have better close win rates?
So first of all, I think it's a wonderful document that shows everything that, the real important pieces that you need all in one place. So it gives you a holistic approach to the sales process and the engagement process. And so I think it's incredibly important that you have it really laid out in front of people. You're going to use this as a guide, and I would hope that people would use it as a guide. So if you go linearly from top to bottom, you're walking through the process and everything makes sense. But I would use this not only as a guide on how to design my customer engagement workflow or prospect engagement workflow. I would use it also as a reminder of some of the things that you need to do to get them over the hump of making a purchasing decision, and then ultimately into loyalty as a loyal customer. The important part is that it doesn't have to go directly in order. Now, you'll start out that way as you try to build awareness, try to develop the lead and turn it into an interested customer, to generate and create desire, to then turn into action, and then the action becomes a loyal customer, right? Now, you may be at the action phase, right? But your prospect isn't quite capturing the ability to go back and to have all this available right in front of you, all laid out, and say, well, I might need to go back to reinforce interest. Even though I'm at this phase, I'm farther along with this prospect and this potential customer, there are some things that I could do that could help reassure and reinforce what they learned along the way, and I may need to go back and forth. So there's nothing wrong with using this as a guide to say, well, if I think I've gotten them to the action stage, and that's wonderful, I'm at sales enablement, I've gotten them to where I'm trying to convert them, or I'm converting them, but something's missing. Go back to your process and reanalyze it, use this as a guide to say, you know what, when we didn't do as good of a job at the lead generation or interest phase, and maybe there's some things that we could do now that could help reinforce them. Being able to be flexible enough to say, this is a guide for me, and this is a way to understand the important elements of the sales and marketing process and how they work together, and not being afraid to say, hey, I got somebody who came in with interest. It was an inbound lead. They skipped the lead generation part because they're coming to me saying, I have a need, we have a problem, we have a pain point, but you need to go back and say some of the elements that you put together for awareness and lead generation are really important to be able to connect them with, reinforce their interest and move them forward. So using elements from different phases is fine, but getting them qualified well is really important. And then as you move them through, you want to move them through the process and this is a good overview of what is needed at each step, or the focus of each step should be.
So as we get ready to close, what we have really unpacked a lot about the prospecting and the discovery process, and just especially for legal tech, because it is so niche and longer sales cycles. And once lawyers makes decisions, they're stuck in their ways. But that's the process of law, and that's the business of law. And that translates into how they purchase technology, products, and services. So as we wrap up, what are some of your best tips and advice to give to other legal tech startups and scale-ups as they are building their companies, and, how to improve their own sales processes?
So first and foremost, get organized. Write out all your thoughts, throw them down on paper, and organize them into a cohesive messaging strategy. What am I trying to convey as a business? What are my products trying to convey, and how do they reinforce the business goals? So you want to be consistent with your prospects in terms of what you're telling them, how you're describing who you are and what you have to offer, so that you're not taking them on a zigzag journey where they feel like a pinball bouncing around. Who are you? So you want to be very clear about that, and start with your goal as an organization in your company, and then as you build the elements of it, how does this product fit into your ultimate goal as a business? How does this product fit into your ultimate goal as a business? How do they work together if you have multiple products to drive, the understanding of where you want to go as a business? I'd like to say something that is particular to legal and legal tech entrepreneurs and sales professionals. If you're in legal tech, a law firm is not going to buy on your schedule. They're not going to meet your timeline, your expectations. You may sit in the awareness category for 2 years. They're not a prospect. They're an interested party. They need to be a relationship built. You need to make sure that they understand what you have to offer, who you are. Most legal tech boils down to a handful of products for any particular product set. So there's going to be the market leader. There are going to be the few products that can meet the needs that the market leader offers. And then there's going to be a bunch of other companies that are trying to break in, startups. They have ideas. Maybe they have an early phase product, right? All of that stuff is going to be there. But the customer, the law firm, is going to want to know that you're established. They're going to want to see history. They're going to want to see that you've been around and you have other customers. So you're in this catch-22. Can't break into legal until you have customers. Can't get customers in legal until you break into legal, right? So there's this cycle that you have to kind of break through, and it's really about continuous touch points, constantly reminding them of who you are. Hey, I'm here. Our business exists. These are the products that we offer. Here's how we're evolving them over time. Every time you have an opportunity to communicate to a prospect or to a suspect, we used to call them suspects before we called them prospects back in the day. So a suspect is somebody that you're interested in. A prospect is somebody that you might actually be able to walk through the sales process and convert. So when you're talking about your suspect list, all the different people that are potentially could be buyers in the future, you want to show them who you are. And that may take years. They constantly see you. They constantly, when that pain point arises, when they get to a place where they're ready to embrace change, they're looking for an alternative, and they're serious about it. That's when you want to be able to turn it into a prospect and then walk them through the sales process. But making sure that you're in the back of their mind, that they know you exist, who you are, what you have to offer. Well, I have product A, and I know there's this product B out there, and I've seen them and their marketing, and all their ads, and their, the owners are on social media, and all this. I've seen them over and over again. You've built and developed trust, even subconsciously in the back of their mind. So now the first thing to think of is, hey, we got a problem here. Why don't we're looking to change. We're really struggling. Whatever the problem is with the current vendor we have, we're looking for an alternative, or we're finally ready to embrace this technology that we don't have and that we've never had because we're growing as an organization. I remember seeing this company. I remember, and that's what you want. You want to create that connection. So that will take years. Start from day one. Talk about who you are. Engage in the community. Get involved in different organizations, and make sure that when the customer is ready to buy, they know who you are and what you have to offer. Because legal doesn't buy on your timeline. They won't buy because you're going to go out of business without their deal. They're going to buy when they're ready. And that might mean you go out of business if you don't lay the foundational work that's so needed for selling into legal. And it's you have to be prepared for a longer journey, a longer sales cycle. Again, you're not going to get rich right out of the gate unless you have some incredibly earth-shattering, industry-changing, technology that revolutionizes the way in which they practice law. And that happens once every 20 years, 30 years. It's, and maybe you'll be lucky enough, and I hope you are, but for your value add, for your, efficiency products, and I'm going to make your better, I'm going to solve your problems better than the other person, or I'm going to solve your problems in a certain way. All of that, those type of businesses, the majority of us, the 98% of us, we're going to have to make sure that the legal community recognizes our brand and our business as a valuable option. So important. And they won't see that if they don't know you exist.
Awesome. Chris, thank you so much for joining me to talk about sales discovery process and truly how prepping improves closing. And for the rest of the Marketing Phoenix audience, y'all come back.
Thank you very much for having me.